Ripped off, out of pocket, short-changed. No one likes getting a bad deal.
But knowing who to trust can be tough.
None of these people can help. They all pass me on.
So when your money is under threat and you think you've lost out, Rip Off Britain is here to help.
We'll be investigating the companies that you say are letting you down.
My life was in the balance. Where was their compassion?
And we'll be taking on the scammers that are causing you heartache and misery.
I felt sick. I knew I'd been scammed.
So whether it's a mistake that's left you out of pocket or a blatant rip-off, we're here to help you find out what you can do about it. This is Rip Off Britain. Hello and welcome once again to Rip Off Britain. Now, as always, we're armed with all the tools that you need to help spot the scammers hiding in plain sight and to stay clear of them.
Including today, the master counterfeiters who are targeting your post. Now, can you tell the difference between a genuine stamp and the fakes? I know I can't. But they have been costing some people far more than just a lost letter.
It cost us in every way, financially, probably between £10,000 and £15,000 at least. But emotionally, they've kind of ruined, something that's been a family tradition for my whole life.
Plus, justice at last for holidaymakers who realised too late that the airport meet and greet service that they trusted to look after their cars was, in fact, little more than a bunch of rogues. We're joined by the police officer who helped take down some major players.
And if, like me, you're increasingly worried regarding headlines about scammers using deep fake technology to scam their targets, then stick around today. I'll be finding out how it works and getting a good lesson, I hope, in ways to try and spot it.
But first, to a name that is becoming, I'm afraid, synonymous with fraud, particularly when it comes to scams which involve paying for something but never actually receiving it. Now, I'm talking about Facebook Marketplace. Now, according to figures from one high street bank, more than 3/4 of so-called purchase fraud originates on that platform.
Well, we've become used to telling the stories of people who lost out when they thought they were buying something on Facebook Marketplace. As the people in our first film today discovered, anyone who's looking to sell something that way is also now firmly in the scammers' sights.
Mobile hairdresser Teresa Rickman from Poole in Dorset might have the tools of the trade when it comes to those locks and tresses, but she also prides herself on her confidence selling products online.
I've used Facebook Marketplace many times before. It's been very successful. I've sold a lot of things, clothing, electrical items, even a guitar.
So in February 2023, when Teresa wanted to sell her son's iPhone, she didn't hesitate. She listed it for £340 and it was quick to draw some attention.
Within 30 seconds, I had 3 people interested. The one that was most persistent offered to pay upfront.
The potential buyer asked Teresa if she'd be willing to post the phone.
I told him I was reluctant to do because due to its value, but assured me, no worries, I'll pay before you post. I asked where they lived. It was in Wolverhampton, and how they were going to pay via a bank transfer. And could I do a short video, which made me think they were obviously very interested, and that was a sale.
Happy that the deal was sealed, Teresa packaged up the phone and headed off to the post office. But when she got there, the promised £340 hadn't hit her account. So Teresa waited and started to question her decision to send off the phone.
I must have been in the post office for at least half an hour, getting to the front of the queue, going to the back of the queue again.
But Teresa was reassured the money was pending.
I was sent numerous emails, supposedly from a bank, that the funds would be released the minute a receipt was seen.
The initial email, branded with the logo of a money transfer company, said the £340 would be released as soon as the proof of postage receipt was logged in its database. So after much deliberation and convinced by the official-looking email, Teresa finally parted with the phone. She then sent off the proof of delivery required to release the funds. But 4 hours later, there was still no sign of the £340.
I was told, still wait. They'll be coming through.
But then came a very peculiar request. The buyer asked Teresa for a £200 fee in order to upgrade her bank account to receive the payment for the phone.
He then got back to me saying there was a problem with my bank account. It wasn't a business bank account and it wouldn't receive that large sum of money. At that point, I knew, no way. I've been had, and bank accounts don't work like that.
Teresa realised she had been scammed.
I felt sick to the stomach and started shaking, absolutely shaking uncontrollably, which actually went on for an hour afterwards. And I felt so stupid that I could be caught.
But she quickly struck upon a way she hoped would save the parcel from the scammer's clutches. She asked Royal Mail to redirect the parcel to a nearby post office where she could collect it the next day. But I'm afraid just after midnight, she discovered her plan had been foiled.
I still couldn't sleep. I was still feeling very shaken up. And an email came up from the Royal Mail. You've successfully redirected your parcel back to the original address, which I hadn't done.
But the scammer had. Using the tracking number on the postal receipt Teresa had provided, they had been able to take control of the delivery. So the parcel was on its way back to them. At 7 o'clock the following morning, Teresa got straight on the phone to Royal Mail, but there was nothing she could do.
At this point, I was told it was now on course for delivery.
The scammer had the phone.
That was my only way of ever retrieving the phone for my son. It was gone.
Teresa is amongst the 65,000 people duped by crooks posing as interested buyers on Facebook Marketplace in 2022. Research by TSB Bank found that altogether they had lost an incredible £37 million. Richard M. from Lyme Regis and Paul Sargent from Rotherham were also in their sights. Richard listed his chair and footstool for £100, and very soon someone showed an interest.
The person that was in contact with me suggested that they could use PayPal to pay for it if I was okay with that. I said that was fine.
Just like the scammer who targeted Teresa, this one concocted a tale about Richard's PayPal account, requiring an upgrade before it could accept the money. An upgrade that would cost him £300.
Started getting a little bit more suspicious of it. I realised that it wasn't a genuine PayPal email. It was a totally fictitious email address.
And it was the same story with Paul when he tried to sell a set of golf clubs.
The first doubt I had was when I was asked to create a PayPal business account. And they asked to ask the customer to put an extra £400 into my account. I realised there was something wrong.
Luckily, both Richard and Paul spotted the scam before they lost any money. Back in Dorset, although Teresa's clients have been a real source of strength while she comes to terms with being defrauded, the consequences can be far greater than financial loss.
It's had a huge impact. It's made me so angry that something like this can happen and they're allowed to get away with it and nobody is there to help. But I do think it should be tightened up so that these scammers aren't allowed to use it as a platform. I never thought I'd be caught, and the fact I was, it's not a nice feeling.
We did, of course, try to speak to Facebook's parent company, Meta, about all the cases in that film, but we got no response.
We were, however, able to speak to PayPal, which the scammers used as a front in Richard and Paul's cases. And it sent us a list of tips to help you identify when an email that appears to be from PayPal might actually not be, as Richard and Paul were thankfully able to do. And we have put all of those tips on our website, which is bbc.co.uk/Rip Off Britain.
Well, I must say, my heart goes out to Teresa. But we wanted to find out just how widespread a problem scam buyers are when you're selling something on Facebook Marketplace. So joining me in HQ is tech expert David McClelland and our producer Phil Jeffrey, who's been investigating. So, Phil, we sent you out and we dropped you in it because you don't really do Facebook Marketplace, do you?
No, I've never bought or sold anything on Facebook Marketplace before. But what I wanted to do was find out just what it was like using the platform. So I posted listings to sell a sofa and to sell a games console. I very quickly got lots of responses. And straight away, you might think, this is brilliant. You know, it's really great. I'm getting lots of interest. I'm going to be able to sell the item. But when I looked a little bit more deeply, I noticed a few things that really were warning signs to me.
Like what?
So when I clicked on the buyer profiles, a lot of the time, the buyer didn't seem to be based in the UK, even though I'd made it clear that I was in the UK. So for instance, someone buying the games console, everything about the profile suggested they were based in Canada, and it just didn't ring true. One of the other things I found was they often came really quickly without any follow-up questions about the item's condition or its age. As you can see from this example, Gloria, they were really insistent and really quick to respond to me and push me for answers. So this whole exchange happened within just 7 minutes.
Really, the whole thing?
The whole thing. And you can see there's question marks when I didn't answer straight away. We've got a question mark here, and then, are you here, Philip Jeffrey? And they were within less than a minute of each other. And just 5 minutes after this exchange, I was offered an extra £50 for the item. So it was really immediate, really pressurising, but always with that enticement that, you know, it could be a genuine sale.
And David, do you sell online like that?
Well, yes. We sold a trampoline only a few weeks ago on Facebook Marketplace. But the thing to remember about Facebook Marketplace is that, well, it is simply a listing and introduction service, very much like the classified ads in the back of a newspaper or the little card you might see in your newsagent window. And unlike some other platforms, Facebook takes no responsibility for any payment protection, any listing protection, any buyer protection, and the extent to which Facebook, or Meta, the owner of Facebook, vets the buyers and sellers or the products is kind of unknown.
Now, on this programme, we've talked quite a lot about the online safety bill. So I'm just wondering, has that kicked in for better protection, for example?
Yes, that passed into legislation late last year. And what that will do in theory is put the responsibility on social media platforms to remove scams and spam adverts. However, we're not entirely sure how that will apply to Facebook Marketplace. But one thing that might be a bigger game changer is a new online fraud charter that Meta has signed up to, again, also last year. And that will require anyone who is selling on Facebook Marketplace to verify their identity and their location. If you're asking for payment as well, you'll need to provide some additional verification. So that in principle is all good. Again, I have my doubts. I suspect that this will just push criminals into another area of criminality, taking over legitimate, verified accounts and using those as a vehicle to conduct their criminality.
Yeah, I want to talk about warnings. I mean, what warnings did you come across that, you know, ring that bell time?
So when a buyer contacts you, Facebook do provide a warning immediately, asking you to beware of common scams using payment apps and to watch out for fake emails or requests to update your payment account. You can also click through on a link to learn more about the ways scammers are targeting sellers.
I really want your advice, though, Dave. What would you say to people to really watch out for, what to do, what to have in your head before you start?
Well, as we've seen from Phil's research, you really need to have your wits about you when you're using the platform. I've used it very successfully. Many people do. But if I was to boil it down to one piece of advice, Gloria, it would be this. Do not be bullied on Facebook Marketplace, because that's a common tactic of fraudsters. They want to try and coerce you down to whatever route their fraud is. So take your time, ask advice, and if in doubt, walk away. Simple as that.
Well, we'll put all that advice on our website, bbc.co.uk/ripoff Britain. So I'm very grateful to both David and Phil. Thank you. Time now for our advice clinic, where we call on some of the nation's best experts to come to your aid. Well, in the advice clinic with me now is fraud lawyer Aaron Chowan. Aaron, good to have you with us. And joining us from her home in Norfolk is Elaine Borland. Hi, Elaine. Now, I hope that the eagle-eared among our viewers will have noticed that I said Norfolk, that's where you are, not Manchester, but Manchester is where you've been receiving your speeding fines from. Can you tell me how that all happened?
Yes. In August, I received 2 notices of intended prosecution from Greater Manchester Police regarding speeding fines. I haven't been to Manchester for more years than I care to mention, so I came to the conclusion that my car must have been cloned.
Well, we've got pictures of your actual car and the speeding car side by side. Let's have a look at them. So looking at the picture, yours is the one on the left, is that correct?
Yes.
Same model and same colour, but talk us through the differences.
My car is a sport model, and it's got sport written on the back, and it's quite obvious it's not on the cloned vehicle.
So did you appeal the fine?
Yes, I sent photographs to Manchester Police, all angles of the car. I sent my VIN number and a copy of my V5. 28 days elapsed, and they contacted me again, asking for the information again, which I forwarded to them again. In the meantime, I received a further fine from a company in London because the person that had cloned my vehicle had been into a garage, bought fuel, and driven off without paying.
To the tune of what in terms of money?
Well, the speeding fines could have gone to £1,000 each, and the fuel fine was £90.
Oh, Lord, how did you feel about that?
It's just complete shock, really. The speeding fines were bad enough, but then for it to be compounded with this fuel fine as well, it was just, well, unbelievable, really.
Well, that's obviously a considerable sum and outrageous considering you weren't driving in any of the cases.
Exactly.
Well, let me bring Aaron in here. And Aaron, what do you think's been going on here?
That's another sorry case of cloning. Cloning is where criminals are copying the number plate of a very similar model and colour of a vehicle and using it for criminal purposes. So there's about 13,000 cases of this a year, and it's becoming a bigger problem. And these fraudsters are using social media to find images of similar vehicles and clone the plates. And that's unfortunately what's been going on.
Well, as we just heard from Elaine, you know, she was hit with these two speeding fines and then with a completely different thing, which is about petrol. So what can she do to protect herself against this?
Well, I've got to say, I've got to praise Elaine. She's done a lot of the great things you meant to do. It's finding evidence to show that it's not your vehicle, the photos, send your V5 document to fuel organisation or the authority that's trying to put a fine on you. Anything you've got from when you bought the vehicle to show that there has been no modifications, your insurance documents show there's no modifications, evidence where you were at the time. Send all this information in. There's a few other things you could do. You can contact the police on a non-emergency number 101, and also it's worth contacting DVLA and letting them know as well that you've got this situation. They'll keep a record, and that helps you build up the evidence to challenge this if it happens again.
Well, when Elaine came to us, we went straight to Greater Manchester Police, and it told us that it has suspended the two offences to give her time to send photos of her car, which they have now received. And I'm pleased to say that it's cancelled the notices against Elaine as a result. So, Elaine, I imagine that must be a big relief.
An enormous relief, yes. And, you know, when you're sort of widowed and you're an old-age pensioner, you don't need this sort of thing happening in your life.
No.
So, yes, I'm delighted it's all over and done with. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, we're very happy for you. Job done. And as for the fine for the stolen fuel in London, Elaine managed to cancel that one herself. Well, of course, Aaron, we don't know whether this might happen again. And out of the blue, Elaine might receive yet another ticket through the post. So if that should happen, what can she or indeed anyone else in that situation do?
Well, beyond what we've already said, I think send the decision notices where it's been cancelled and show it to the next organisation and say, look, I've been through this, here's my evidence pack, I'm sending it back, and others have accepted my evidence. It's keeping that all together and resending it, and hopefully Elaine will always be safe despite the hassle it causes.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, thank you, and Elaine, thank you, and let's cross fingers that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
Now, throughout the programme, we're talking about the scammers who are hiding in plain sight and trying to convince you to part with your cash. And certainly this is the part of the programme where normally we would be reading out letters and emails from people at home. But I'd like to start with something that actually happened to two of my friends who are both called Sue, because it's an indication of the way in which scammers come up weekly, daily sometimes, with new scams. And if you can get that message out there, it's a warning to everybody. Now, what happened is this. They both got a call on their home landline from someone who said he was called Graham and he was calling from the Department for Work and Pensions because he needed to check their addresses because letters that they'd been sent had been returned. Now, Sue and Sue both smelled a bit of a rat, so they asked Graham what postcode he had on his records for them. Well, he mumbled something quite similar, but not actually the real thing. And when one of the Sues suggested that he write to her, Graham insisted he wasn't a scammer. Cheeky blighter, of course he was. So she hung up.
Good for her. That's what we always advise. But if you've spotted any suspicious scams and you want to spread the word, you can report suspect emails by forwarding them to report@phishing.gov.uk. And any worrying text messages by forwarding them to 7726. That's spam, S-P-A-M, on your telephone keypad. And of course, we'd obviously love to hear about them too, so that we can mention them on the programme. Now, the email address for that, or indeed anything else you'd like to talk about, is ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk.
You can also find us on Facebook by searching BBC Rip Off Britain, and you can write to us at Rip Off Britain, BBC, Media City UK, Salford, M50 2BH. But here comes our usual warning. Please don't send any original documents because we can't return them.
Now, most of the scams we talk about tend to involve big, often life-changing sums of money. But fraudsters also see the benefit of hitting a lot of people for seemingly insignificant sums, which was exactly what happened to the people in our next film.
But while they were caught out by counterfeit versions of an everyday item that cost little more than £1, for one of the people you're about to meet, the impact of it all ended up costing thousands of times that. Spot the difference? Sandra Horton from Bewdley in Worcestershire has got a postage stamp puzzle.
Would you know the difference between that one and that one? So, what do you think? Ask your friends and family, can they guess what the difference is? Real? Fake? No one can tell the difference. It's really, really hard. This stamp, the Queen, isn't as dark as the surrounding area. She's a little bit whiter. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is this little end bit. You rub your finger down that little bit there, and it's perfectly smooth. And you rub it down this little bit, and it's little lumps and bumps. And that's the clue.
Sandra's fascination with these stamps all started in April 2023.
My friend Lynn rang me a couple of weeks after Easter and said, "Have you got my Easter card?" So I said no. And a few days after that, the postman put a card through the door to say that I owed £2.50 for postage and I needed to go to the sorting office.
Lynn's Easter card had been held back by Royal Mail, and when Sandra arrived at the post office, she learned the surprising reason why.
I discovered that the stamp was counterfeit. I was shocked.
Sandra rushed home and called Lynn to tell her that the stamp she'd used was fake.
Well, she was shocked. And my friend said I got them on Amazon. I couldn't believe it.
Lynn contacted Amazon, which said it would refund her if she returned the stamps, which she duly did. Meanwhile, safe in the knowledge that Lynn had always intended to send her the warmest Easter wishes, Sandra now treats every visitor to a game of real or fake. But the fallout from philatelic fakery can be much more serious for some.
Don't tend to need to send many letters nowadays, but there are occasionally some that we still do in that way. And of course we need one of these.
Kerry Harris from Tewkesbury sends a letter like this once a year. It contains a cheque to cover the maintenance fee for the timeshare she's owned in Cornwall since 2003.
Been paying it this way for 20 years, never seen any reason to change it. Been going down to Cornwall since I was a baby, so it's a place that I've been every year of my life without fail. It's a really special place. It's special for all of the family.
Kerry was running a little late posting 2023's payment, so she went online to quickly get the stamps.
So I went on Amazon, found the stamps, decided that I'd buy a couple of books of first-class stamps to keep me going for a while.
Kerry paid £16.99p for 16 first-class stamps from a third-party seller. And though she didn't realise it at the time, that worked out about 60 pence cheaper than buying from the post office. But she didn't even think to question it.
I think I'm probably one of Amazon's best customers. There's usually a package arriving most days. I've had very few problems given the volume that I order from them. So I had no reason to distrust Amazon when I ordered the stamps from them.
When her stamps arrived, Kerry popped one on the envelope and posted off her maintenance cheque. But 2 weeks later, the timeshare company got in touch to say it hadn't arrived, and if she didn't pay up soon, Kerry might forfeit her timeshare.
I assumed that the cheque had got lost in the post, so I simply sent another one.
Again, Kerry used the stamps she'd bought from Amazon, but her cheque only made it to the timeshare company weeks later, and with a surcharge to pay because the stamp was a fake. When Kerry complained to Amazon, her loyalty to the firm was tested.
These are their words. Please note that Amazon is not the seller of this item. When you purchase this item, you entered into a contract with the seller. Therefore, the seller is responsible for any claim you may have arising out of the purchase. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I bought it from Amazon. It's simply Amazon.
Kerry feels thoroughly let down by the website that she trusted implicitly.
They're a large organisation. Surely they would have quality control, due diligence, whatever you call it, to prevent something like this happening.
The consequences for Kerry have been catastrophic. The timeshare company didn't accept the late payment, and she's lost the timeshare that she and her family treasured.
We were absolutely gutted. It cost us in every way, financially, probably between £10,000 and £15,000 at least. But emotionally, they've kind of ruined, something that's been a family tradition for my whole life. It is crazy to think it all started from just buying a stamp.
Now, we did, of course, pick this up with Amazon, which told us that it strictly prohibits counterfeit products and works with brands and law enforcement to protect customers. After we got in touch, Amazon said it removed the fake stamps from sale and took action against the third parties selling them. Amazon also said that it's working with Royal Mail to improve the ways it can detect fake stamps, and added that customers can always contact its support team for a full refund on any product that isn't as advertised.
Well, to discuss this, Aaron is back with me, and we're also joined on the line from Galashiels by stamp expert philatelist Dave Waldie. Hi, Dave, starting with you. Is it possible to say how big a problem counterfeit stamps are?
It's difficult to be precise how big the problem is. There are clearly a great number of examples of fake stamps, counterfeit stamps being sold on the internet. And the counterfeit stamps are so good, there's no way the general public would ever be able to recognise the counterfeit stamps from the real ones if they were side by side.
Can you give us a crash course in how we might know whether a stamp is genuine or not?
What you've got to look out for, certainly the early stamps with Queen Elizabeth's head on them, they had a shiny, almost embossed barcode that you could rub your finger on. And every barcode was supposed to be different, and the stamps could only be used once and then not again. Other telltale signs include the perforations themselves on the fake stamps. They're just not quite right. Also, on the sheets of stamps, they tend to have perforations round about each of the stamps so you can remove them from the sheet. With some of the counterfeit stamps, they come in very poor quality, sometimes almost like greaseproof paper, and you can tell straight away.
Aaron, just turning to you, both the cases in the film were stamps bought on Amazon. So what's Amazon's responsibility in all this?
Well, if you look at Amazon's model, that you're either purchasing on their site from Amazon or you're purchasing from one of the retailers on their site. But ultimately, Amazon have the duty to sort it out if you buy counterfeit products on their website. Now, they are being more proactive. They've got a policy about counterfeit products. They make sure only authentic products should be on their site. Obviously, we see these counterfeit products coming in. They do have an A to Z guarantee that if you have a dispute with a marketplace seller, they will refund. And ultimately, I think you do get your money back in the end.
What about the losses incurred, especially losses that are a direct result of counterfeiting? I mean, we saw in the film Kerry, who ended up losing her timeshare. Is there anything they can do to get the retailer to stump up?
Loss is a tricky subject whenever you're trying to claim a loss in these circumstances. It's ultimately a breach of contract. You get the money back for the goods you didn't really receive, which were genuine. You might be able to get some other losses which are really obvious to the seller or Amazon. But when you're getting into kind of losses like Kerry and a loss of a holiday or something which the seller would never have known about, that becomes really tricky. It's worth raising because if you've been misled to buy goods, it's possible you can claim some of those wider losses.
Well, Dave, just quickly coming back to you, are there any tips you can offer to people so they can avoid buying counterfeit stamps?
Well, I think you've really got to look at the price that they're being offered. The only official places that you can buy first and second class stamps are through the post office, perhaps through the Royal Mail's own website, through large retailers who have key accounts with the Royal Mail. That I truly believe that a lot of people that are selling these fake stamps don't know they're selling them.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. The fundamental thing is do be careful, and thanks to you too, Aaron.
Now back to the Advice Clinic, where today I have a question for tech expert David McClelland.
You know, there's hardly a day goes by when we don't read articles about artificial intelligence or hear another story on the news about the advancement of what AI can do. To me, it's all a bit scary. But David, I want to start off with the other phrase that I see all the time. So it's all about deep fake. Now, we all know what fake is, but what's deep fake?
Okay, so one definition of a deep fake is a digital impersonation of a person that's been powered by artificial intelligence. So it's an AI-generated likeness of somebody. But what AI has done in particular over the last year or so is made it accessible to anyone. And the problem there is the scams, it's the frauds. It's when bad actors are putting words into trusted faces' mouths. Take you, for example, Gloria, you've been gracing our screens for a long time, giving consumer advice. But somebody, anybody, could very easily take your face, take your voice, and get you to say whatever it is that they wanted. And look, it's very easy for me to talk about deepfakes, but I've got a clip here to show you.
Hello there, Gloria Hunniford here. Our technology expert, David McClelland, is officially the most suave, handsome, and knowledgeable consumer expert that I know. I'm in a state of shock about this, actually, Dave. Are you going to tell me that is an AI version of me?
Yes, I took just 2 minutes of your voice that I took from the show, and obviously I took that clip from Ripoff here in the HQ. And I was able to feed that into a couple of different AIs to put words into your mouth. Now, I programmed that to say nice things about me, but I could have programmed that AI to say absolutely anything that I wanted, whether that's nice things about me or to encourage people to buy cryptocurrency scams, anything that I wanted.
I'm kind of a bit shaky inside because I can see how that, I mean, and if I'm being honest, if I was sitting in a room and I saw that in a distance, I would say that's me.
Yeah, and it's easier than ever before, and I think it's only going to get easier, cheaper. That didn't cost me anything to make, but also faster and more convincing, which poses real problems to us, to our viewers, really, as to who do we trust, who can we trust anymore?
So what are the big tech companies doing to try and put a hold on AI to stop it?
Specifically with regards to deep fakes and scams, social media platforms are obliged as part of the online safety bill to take down any scam adverts. So in theory, deep fakes that are selling fake goods or fake investment scams should be taken down by social media platforms. The thing is, are they able to? How many of those will slip through the net?
I mean, David, I know you don't have all the answers at the moment. I mean, nobody really has. But going forward, what are we as consumers going to do, knowing that AI is everywhere? What can you do?
It all comes down to trust, I think, in one word, and we need to wake up to the fact that the things that we used to trust, things like, you know, watching a video of Gloria or whoever else, we can no longer trust those in the way that we used to, particularly when we're consuming them on social media. Whatever we see, whether it's an email, an advert on social media, or even a letter through the post, never trust, always verify. And I think we'd be in a much safer place if we're able to do that.
That's a fabulous thing to end on. David, thank you very much. It's really, really interesting to talk to you about it.
Now, every summer we get a flurry of emails from people who've returned from their holiday in the sun, only to find that the airport meet and greet service that they trusted to look after their beloved car whilst they were away has done quite the opposite. Now, stopping the rogue parking operators is not an easy job, as we've found out in the past. But shortly, I'm going to be hearing about a big case that brought one kingpin to justice and his companies to their knees. But before that, here's just a reminder of the last time we went out with the teams that are trying to tackle the issue.
6:30 a.m. on a South Manchester housing estate, and City Council neighbourhood officer Pete O'Brien is on the lookout.
Right, we're just going to check a location that is popular for use by some of the licensed meet and greet parking companies.
When we filmed with Pete, he'd spent the previous year keeping a close eye on some of the meet and greet businesses that operate out of Manchester Airport. They promised holidaymakers that their cars would be securely parked while they were away. But Pete found that instead, a number of them were left on the side of the road, in fields, even in pub car parks.
In the peak periods of August, there'll be whole streets that are taken up by basically what are holidaymakers' cars, holidaymakers who think they've parked them in a secure car park, but actually when they hand the cars over to the drivers, they're often just parked in locations such as this on your right.
Pete is part of a surveillance team that's been set up by the council, following complaints from holidaymakers who've had their cars returned in a worse state than when they left them, as well as from disgruntled residents fed up with other people's cars crowding the streets where they live.
There's a group of cars there on our right that we know this is a location very favoured by several of these companies. It's no more secure than leaving it on any residential street, drive yourself and park your car, because that's effectively what these guys are doing, but they're charging you for the privilege. If something does happen to your car, whether it be a dent or a scratch, because of the nature in which they park them, or possessions go missing from your car, sadly you'll find that your car is not covered on your own personal insurance in most cases.
That's something Mark Robbins and his partner Michelle from Blackpool found out the hard way after trusting their car with a Manchester meet and greet service. When they returned from their trip, the relaxing mood of their holiday was quickly shattered.
He basically came to us, said, look, your car's in one piece, but I'm sorry, we have damaged it. I was like, what do you mean you've damaged it?
All the paintwork above the wheel was all scratched. The rear fog lamp was all broke. It was my first car. I'd only bought it in March. I've had to pay for the damage myself. It's literally cost me £200. I've emailed them numerous times after that, but nothing's ever been done. It's absolutely disgusting.
That meet and greet company is no longer trading, but in the years since we met Mark and Michelle, many more have opened up to take its place. And in turn, the law enforcement measures designed to shut them down and protect unwitting holidaymakers have also stepped up a gear.
Well, I'm joined now by Sergeant Matt Basirat from Cheshire Police, whose patch actually covers Manchester Airport, which we saw in that film. Matt, I think we're very aware on this programme that you've got rogue airport parking firms. They've been in business for a very long time. Doesn't seem to be getting any better, does it? How big is the problem?
It's massive, and since your film in 2017, we've had two large plots of land in the Wilmslow area that have been used for large-scale rogue meet-and-greet car parks.
Yeah, I think we've actually got film to show what that was like. Now, just talk us through what actually happened in this case.
So this is the site at Moss Lane, which is our most recent case. So we were having roughly 30 to 40 incidents reported each month of customers' cars who were damaged. Miles were added whilst people were away. Customers have been threatened with knives. Yeah, it's been quite a large demand for us.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that actually in Cheshire, the problem is not that they park on roads illegally, they just take over somebody's land with the permission of the landowner?
In many cases, not, no. And they run these businesses illegally from the land.
Is there any prosecution you can bring against them for this, like trespass or something?
We haven't managed to bring any successful prosecutions yet for land offences. However, we are bringing prosecutions against some of the criminality that we've seen on these sites, such as the customers being threatened with a knife. We are sending people to court for that. And in the latest site that we've had at Moss Lane, there's been questions raised about the vehicle that was being used to transport people between the airport and the car park. So we had multiple reports of it being in a dangerous condition and uninsured. So we actually seized that off the people who were using that vehicle several times for no insurance and also for it being in a dangerous condition. Sometimes they didn't even have seatbelts.
So rather like Al Capone, who was taking on a tax dodge issue, you can get them by some other means.
Absolutely. We will always target them by whichever way we can to deal with the problem. 100% we will.
Now, one of the things I found interesting was people come back and find that the mileage has increased by anything up to, 3,000 miles sometimes. How are they getting away with being able to do that?
So the problem that we have, and customers unknowingly sign contracts, and there is a small clause in the contract that allows customers' cars to be moved, but it doesn't cap a mileage on how much they can move the car. So as you alluded to there, the most we've had is 3,000 miles, and that was in a vehicle that we found with luggage tags we believe was being used as a taxi whilst customers were on holiday.
And when there is major damage done to a car, what kind of recourse do people actually have?
Unfortunately, there isn't much at all that we can do about it. And we had one case where a customer came back from holiday and his bonnet had been taken from his car.
Look, let's try and end on a positive note. What can people do to ensure that the company they are going to use genuinely will look after their car?
Our biggest ask to people, and this is a nationwide problem, would be to go onto the website for the airport that you are travelling from and use the official car parks. They all have a section about car parking, and to use that official guidance, and hopefully that will be secure parking. But if you just Google airport car parking, you run the risk of a comparison site that will take you to one of these illegal car parks.
So it may cost you a little bit more if you go to one of the official car parks, but in the long run, you probably could be saving quite a lot of money.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you very much indeed for that very good information. But I tell you what, I am staggered, and I'm sure there will be people at home staggered, realising that you can sign a waiver which says that they can drive your car at their pleasure.
Yes, it's awful, yes. It really is awful.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt.
Welcome.
Wow, talk about brazen. Yeah. I mean, honestly, some of the actions of those rogue meet and greet services really take your breath away.
They do.
But I'm afraid that is very nearly it from us for today. Don't forget you can find plenty of advice and information about some of the things we're talking about all this series on our website, bbc.co.uk/ripoffbritain.
But of course, none of that would exist without your stories. So please do keep sending them in. Now, the email address, which I hope you know by now, is ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk. And whether it's a question for all our experts or a golden nugget of advice from your own experience, we are literally all ears.
Indeed we are. But until we see you again, it's thanks so much for your time today. And from all of us here in the Rip Off Britain team, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
We're back in the lab with the team as they face new challenges, all new Silent Witness. Press red to watch. More detective work on BBC Sound. Lucy and her team investigate the crimes of women from the 19th and 20th century. Listen now.